Welcome to Unlocked. I'm Dr. Joel Spakowski, and in this show, we explore how truth comes to life through real stories and real people. We're in Mob 9 today, still interacting with John Lenhart over this epic story and this epic journey that he's been on. A lot of trauma happened and a lot of light happened as well. And I'm excited for you to hear more about how other people get involved in the story today. So John obviously plays a big role in this story, but there are, as we saw in the last Mobbed episode, some other key players who play really pivotal roles in figuring out and exposing what's really going on in the church in the Fox Valley. So I hope you enjoy, and let's dig in. All right. Thank you once again for being on the show, John. We've got quite the series going here with this Mob series, and I got to play a little part last episode, which was fun, and having you be the host too. So with that said, before I get into it anymore, could you just give us a recap as to where we are and where we're going from here?
Right. We're right in the middle of basically leading up to the most critical portion of this whole story and kind of the backstory of why this really horrendous event occurs, which we'll cover in the next episode. So basically up to this point in 2008, we had completely dismissed the charismatic pastor. And then we were waiting for the big church pastor and his elders to respond to their position on modeling God. In February 2009, they said, we're not going to take a position. They blamed it on Andrew and the judge. And then that was kind of the end of that. Everybody was real disappointed, and we thought we kind of dismissed the big church as well. Well, as soon as we'd done that, the charismatic pastor basically had a run in with you, one of the women from the testimonial of the book, and with Laura. And the three of you kind of permanently just put him in his place. He kicked an elder off the board, and he basically said nobody from his church, none of the elders, the associate pastor, the supposed prophetess from his church was allowed to talk to anybody. He would do all the talking. He basically successfully isolated, like a cult leader, his entire organization, and made himself completely in charge and the only person who could talk because he didn't want to be questioned. So with that said, it was now time for the big church to make their move. And like I said in the previous episode, I didn't have to say or do anything at this point. When the big church didn't respond and I dealt with the charismatic pastor, I knew I was right. I knew everything was, there was no need for me to say anything, but it was people within our fellowship who decided they wanted to step in and maybe try to explain it and try to handle it. Well, today's example, neither of these two people really were trying to step in to explain anything because it was the big church pastor that came after them. So remember, the big church basically in February said they're not going to take a position. And now here we are in April, and the big church pastor reaches out to Andrew and says, I'd like to get together at least one more time. I have cared about you for many years and still do. Our last contact was via email. I prefer face-to-face time. Are you willing? So this was Andrew's response. I'm willing to get together. In fact, I believe I stated this in my last email to you and the elders. I've also thought a lot about what has happened. There are a few things I've realized. So this is really amazing. I mean, Andrew's an amazing person, and he's had 2 months now to do some self-reflection. And this is kind of the gist of where Andrew was at. He says, as you know, my dad was a pastor. I believe that a pastor ought to be more excellent as an effect of God's calling. Not only did my dad abandon me and my family, he abandoned us as a shepherd. His actions were 100% contrary to what I believe a pastor ought to do. I've walked through a lot of wounds my dad caused. I'm realizing more today. There is more for me to walk through. I know God will stand next to me as I walk through this. My faith tells me he will. Now, your mom tells part of that story in her
Right.
interview. You could almost
Yeah.
splice in a section of your mom talking about that.
Oh,
So this is
totally.
nothing that we haven't talked about. Next, Andrew says, I know you are also aware that the San Damiano pastor and I were once really good friends. He was also my pastor. I believed he used my virtue against me. He could not or would not explain to me where I was wrong. He only gossiped, avoided, and made passive aggressive statements to me and about me. So now here's the interesting thing. He's kind of on a roll here. He's saying, I've had two pastors in my life, and both of them have abandoned me. And remember, the San Damiano pastor, Andrew and two other people had asked that San Damiano pastor to be the pastor of San Damiano. And now Andrew looking back on it goes, he never helped me. He never answered my questions. He never stepped into these things. In fact, all he did was gossip and gossip about me and gossip to me and gossip about me.
So he's clearly got damage from shepherds in his life. And I find it interesting. He's being pretty bold and sharing this all with the big church pastor. And I guess part of what I'm seeing too through his confrontation to the San Damiano pastor was kind of goes to the bigger point of like, why does it matter that the big church makes a statement at all? It's like, by this point in the story, it's too late for these guys to say, I don't have a stance on modeling God when they've already talked about it the way they have and strayed people away from it the way they have. So what's the significance of him sharing this all with the big church pastor then?
Right. And that's going to come here at the next part. But remember, I like how you reset the context there. Is the big church pastors said, we're not going to answer this. And then he waits 2 months and then goes, hey, buddy, can we get together? Like nothing
Like
ever happened.
reset button type thing. Yeah.
Reset. He kind of hit the reset button. So now Andrew, and I really, the thing about showing this email is really showing his thought process and really showing how well he handled things. But also this is actually what happened. This is a documented record of what happened. So Andrew though now says, you were also my pastor and mentor at one time.
Mm.
We have had many amazing conversations in the past. You had a part in my walking through some very difficult wounds from my dad and the bottom I hit after poor choices I made. So Andrew's recognizing you did have a role. I can remember first talking to you about some of the things God was teaching me through John Lenhart. You seemed excited that I was pushing into God. I asked you to show me if what I was learning was wrong. I believed that as my pastor and mentor, that was not too much to ask. I can remember you stating you had some concerns about John and modeling God. Now, again, this is all private. This is all pre anything I've been saying in the story so far. We didn't know this thing was going on like this.
Right.
However, when I asked you to explain, you would not. I don't understand how you could choose to not tell me these concerns, not show or tell me these concerns. After all, not only was I a sheep in your flock, you were supposed to be mentoring me. Remember, there was this prehistory of
Oh,
him
yeah.
being mentored by him. I realize now that my dad, the San Damiano pastor, and now you have all hurt me in similar ways. You are all supposed to be more excellent because God has called you to be shepherds. So what he's saying here is to the big church pastor, you are the same as these other two people. It's like 3 strikes and I'm out here. Like I've trusted 3 pastors and none of you've helped me. But Angie now is blatantly stating, I asked you for help. Like, you want to be my pastor? I'm reading this book. What do you think about it? You see that I'm getting passionate about God and you're excited about that, but then you're kind of bad mouthing John. And when I ask you for help, you are unable to help me, just like the San Damiano pastor. So basically, like 1-to-1, no one else is around. Why didn't you help?
Right. So this is still all an email, right?
Yes.
So what Andrew's doing, which is great, is like, I don't know if he just outright said this or not, but as he get to the point where he just asks it, what's the point in us meeting?
Well, right. So then he says, one of the hardest parts for me is I don't believe I caused this. All I've done is ask you questions. In turn, I have been projected on. The judge and I were lumped into the same email issued by the cowboy and the elders. I never wrote the elders. So that's a part that I don't know if you track those previous emails and now you put yourself in his shoes, and maybe with all the stuff going on, no one put themselves in Andrew's shoes and looked like, what was the story from his perspective? He never wrote the elders. Why are they attacking him?
He never picked, like they're like treating him like he picked a fight when it's like, I was
Yeah,
never involved.
he never wrote him. He goes, I never asked for their opinion.
Mm.
I asked you questions, and in response was sent a lumped together response stating, I have made accusatory statements which caused the elders to feel scolded and disrespected. So that was how the elders got out of issuing a position. Andrew and the judge have caused us, blah, blah, blah. And Andrew's like, how did I get dragged into this?
Yeah.
How did I get tarred with the same? Like in their rush, in the elders' rush to rationalize their not having a position and justify themselves, they hurt Andrew. They wrongly attacked Andrew. I believe you brought this to the elders on my behalf so you wouldn't have to deal with it. So now he's blatantly saying to the big church pastor, you took this to the elders so you wouldn't have to answer my questions and truly be my pastor. The thing is, this was never about the elders in my mind. It was about my pastor and mentor teaching me. I am hurt by how you handle this. I don't believe your actions are worthy of my respect. You are the third man in my life who, in the role of pastor, has wounded me. From my experience, I can honestly say I have no faith in the leadership of the church today. I do not desire to hear your opinion on Mountain God. It no longer bears any weight. If in any way us meeting will help you, I'm willing to meet.
Okay. I'm honestly, John, I remember when all this happened. I don't remember this email because, like, honestly, I feel like if I had remembered this email, I'd be talking about it more than what I have. This is incredible.
It is an amazing email, isn't it?
And it's really well written. It's really vulnerable, but you know what it also is it's an example of what the elders ought to have done if they felt wounded. This is how you handle feeling wounded. You talk, he still is willing to meet with the person. He's not using his wound as an excuse to get out from under asking questions and answering questions and interacting face to face with another brother in Christ. The elders use it's so sickening to me to hear this group of elders, who's really the board of pastors of this big church, say as why they don't want to meet with you anymore or discuss this topic is because you hurt my feelings. Are you kidding me? So that's where I'm like, that's what's really hitting me right now is, I mean, Andrew didn't do this on purpose, but like, I love the way you told the story because it is kind of showing like, well, what Andrew did is what the elders should have done when they felt wounded by what they were accusing the judge and Andrew of doing. It. They should have handled it the way Andrew handled the big church pastor. That's, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Again, such a young age, and the email is absolutely immaculate. One of the reasons why you might not remember this is, remember, we ended with you dealing with the charismatic church. So
Right.
that's where you had your own thing you were doing here. But this is just amazing. Like, again, it's the big church initiating this interaction.
Right.
So Andrew's actually in response, and in response, he literally wrote a perfect email.
Yeah.
Like
incredible.
an absolutely perfect email.
Yep.
So how does the big church pastor respond? Like, how would you respond to that email?
Oh, I'm afraid to hear how he actually did. I don't know. Like,
Because
honestly,
you think about it, you could say, yes, it would help me. Well, now you're not going to, you're too prideful to go, I
right.
need help from
That's not
you.
going to happen. Right.
Okay. Right. And then you could not talk to him at all, but obviously he reached out to him to get some sort of thing going.
my only prediction, like what came to my mind, is he's going to talk about how this hurts his feelings and how he's offended or something like that. I don't know.
I think that would be, he could do that. That would be extremely hard because it's like, wow, you just proved to me you're a really bad pastor because I, a former sheep, is sharing how I felt, and your response is to share how you felt. Like
Yeah.
you're supposed to be more excellent.
Well, hit me with it, John. What's he saying?
You're going to go like this when you see his response. You're going to go, but of course, why haven't I learned this by now? He says, hey, Andrew, we have an all-day conference at the church. Oz Guinness and, 2 other speakers are coming in. And I think it'd be really great. You could come in basically, for free and everything, come in and attend this.
I mean, just completely walks right past everything and another reset button on. Let me try to do you a favor type thing.
So Andrew responds, really short email. Once again, this is another perfect response email. I respectfully decline. In my opinion, great start to this sentence.
Yep. Nice qualifier.
You are in no position to challenge me or request anything of me.
Yeah, bravo.
That's all that email was.
That's great.
2 weeks go by, and the big church pastor decides to write again.
What now? Another favor, another appeal to meeting.
This one's amazing. This is absolutely amazing. I want to thank you for sharing with me how you feel I have hurt you and that you shared it with me directly for my prayerful consideration. So first of all, that first sentence is the big church pastor thanking Andrew for doing something that his elders didn't do.
Right.
My intent was not to hurt you. I want to be judged by my intent. I don't want to find out John Lenhart's intent, but I want to be judged for my intent.
Right.
And I am sorry that you are hurt. Sometime I would like to explain my reason for the delay in answering your questions. But for now, let's assume that your evaluation conclusion of what transpired is accurate. So first, at some time, indefinite time in the future, I'd like to, I'd need some time to come up with the rationalization and justification why I never did my job as pastor towards you.
Not I need time to answer your questions. I need time to tell you why I didn't. Okay.
So sometime I'd like to do that. But for now, let's assume you're right. So that's like, again, this guy was so business savvy. This is a real CEO answer. Like, I'm not admitting to having done it, but let's assume you're right. The question I would then have for you is, so now he put himself in the position to make another request.
But like if you look, really making a request,
well, he's going to make a request.
But he's posed it in a way where it's like, let's assume. So he's kind of put this
he's
veil
basically saying, I don't want to have to answer for anything you've brought up because I want to do a response. And I probably should answer before I require anything, but I'm not going to, and I'm still going to require it, which is a really a finesse move here that a CEO could do. Are you going to totally write me off because of one offense?
Well, I mean, was there only one offense in the first? I mean, even if it was, there's so much wrong with that. Because like Andrew's not saying he's going to completely write him off. He
never said that.
And then it's not just one offense, but even if it was, the offense that Andrew brought up was a major offense. It's
again, which offense?
Are you minimizing? Like, and I'm talking like just wounding me as a pastor.
There you go. Like not all, I mean, there's 3 or 4 other ones that were mentioned.
But that one in particular is, wait a minute. Are we minimizing my trauma now?
Right.
That's
So
Oof.
so basically, you're gonna totally again, this sounds like a spurned lover. Are you, I might have beat you, but are you gonna throw it all away because of the good times we had?
Right.
You know, and Andrew just flat out rejects him. No, thank you.
That was his response?
Yeah. And so what happened is Andrew didn't trust any churches, and he was out. He basically said, I hate all this cult talk.
Yeah.
People were accusing us of being a cult, and yet all these emails were, these people are a cult.
Yeah.
Charismatic Church was a cult. You proved that. And now he's acting like a cult.
Yeah.
And it saddened Andrew so much that the church was so flipped around. Like and all the responses, it was one thing that the big church pastor had done to him. It's another that Andrew was just giving him the chance to confess and repent. And he kept rationalizing and justifying. So Andrew essentially said, I'm out. I'm not going to church. And whatever we were doing, he didn't want to be a part of it. He told us he was out of our group.
Yeah.
And the last text, he sent me a text saying that. And I wrote back, you know, I love you and I appreciate, all you did and let me know if I can help you. And the last text I ever got from Andrew was, I love you.
Yeah. And wow. We're still back in 2009, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to make some assumptions here on my own, it's 2000, 26 now, and those wounds they run deep. These are
Yeah.
deep wounds.
Yeah. And so that's the thing and we had kind of said this in the message with the elders. It's like, look at all the people looking at this. Do you realize the impact you're having on other people? And it's like, this is the impact they had on Andrew.
Right.
So Laura, Andrew, and I were at the core of this group,
Yeah.
and Andrew is now gone.
Right.
So
What's that leave you with?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
One friend who really, who, like, you got a few people in your life, the home church has started and all this, but like, who really know what you've been through and who are really there for you during, I mean, the darkest period of your life.
right, and wishing him well and saying, I'll be here if
Right.
you need me is literally the opposite of a cult.
Oh, right. Your
Like if we
response
were a
to him.
cult and Andrew said, I'm out, I can't take all the cult talk against you guys. I need time. Great. Awesome. We're here for you. Not, you better not say this about that. You better, like, we never,
Or even appealing
ever.
emotionally. The emotional control is really what the big church pastor tried doing with, like, are you really going to write me off because of one offense? Like that appealing to the emotional is a lot of times trying to make the other person feel guilty.
Yep.
It's like, no, there was none of that. Not from you.
Nope. And I truly appreciate it. I love you. We talk about love. I owe you.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have said I owe you, but he understood that I love you. Like, look at what an amazing email and what an amazing job he did. And he was at the very heart of this with Laura and myself. And he, reached out to you and you came in the group. There's so many people, Simon, that he was responsible for me being able to meet. I truly appreciated everything he did. I had no ill will with him
Right.
walking. It was a loss because obviously he's an amazing person and you could see it, but this was taking a toll and it
Yeah.
took a toll on him and he articulated everything very well. But from this point on, he's gone from the story.
Yeah. Then, so then what
So one of
happened?
the things that happened was during this time is the judge told me that during his interactions with the charismatic pastor, the pastor stated that he thought I was wrong for sharing information from the big church pastor's emails on my blog. And this was when the big church pastor was first the one to share my emails with the judge and show he didn't know how to interpret text. If you remember that whole back thing.
Right.
So what
Yep.
happened was he was sharing my emails. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to share your emails too. So the thing is that The charismatic pastor didn't want any of this information from his emails shared in the public. So it's like, again, you can see if you've been so clearly been proven wrong, has so clearly been proven to be a cult leader. Now he was kind of freaking out going, what if you share my emails with everybody? And I had no reason to share his emails back then. But what if you do? Then I'm going to look really bad. And so he started getting really riled up about that. So I wrote to him to explain, look, you know, the big church pastor did this. I did this. I don't think I did anything wrong. And so, and I explained to him, the big church pastor claimed to have an email where I said modeling God was more important than the Bible. And this is why he wouldn't meet with me. So I basically said, look, the big church pastor used that as a rationalization never to meet with me. And then he got proven wrong. So then I was sent an email with this whole explanation to the charismatic pastor. What was his response? I have not read this email except for the first couple of paragraphs. I have no desire to read further, nor do I wish further interaction with you unless you have a desire to repent from what is written in Modeling God. I appreciate you not contacting me further. So again, the charismatic pastor is like, you cannot send me information. I am unwilling to take in any information from you at all. Please don't talk to me at all. I want to have nothing to do with you. So he's just going in that isolation mode.
Okay.
So now the judge and his wife had a meeting with the big church. And the big church pastor wrote to judges and his wife after a private email concerning that meeting they had in April with the big church pastor and his elders. And this was also the big church pastor's immediate response to Andrew's last email to refocus on the judge's wife. So the way the big church pastor handled Andrew just flat out saying, no, thank you, was I'm now going to go after the judge. But there was a context for him to go after the judge because there had been a meeting where basically the elders and the big church pastor had pulled the judge in through his wife to go, well, we have these concerns. And because remember, their families were all involved in the big church.
Right.
So they had pulled them all in. So now the big church pastor wanted to reach out to the judge. And it took the judge, he'd done this, he'd sent this email. So now it took the judge about 3 weeks to respond. And then he wrote to the big church pastor and the elders, and it was quite an email. Okay. The big church pastor wrote the judge and his wife. By the way, I did follow up myself to see that what the administrative aide told me about quotes of my personal emails to you and Andrew were posted on John's website. You might also not be aware that John has threatened to sue the charismatic pastor, the San Damiano pastor, and our big church. I don't know how John could justify that with clear teaching of God's word in 1 Corinthians 6, 1-8 about not bringing a brother to court. So there was another email in between because apparently in that meeting, the judge had basically said, what the administrative aide is saying is not even true. John didn't say that or post that. So when that was sent to the judge, he wrote this really long letter. So we're going to take our time kind of going through this because it is kind of like Andrew's, email, like in 3 dimensions here. So he says, the big church pastor and elders, I want you to know the last month since meeting with you and the elders has been extremely hard emotionally and spiritually for me. I have had an emptiness in my heart since talking with you. I had hoped we were finally over and I could put this episode behind me, all the while learning and growing. But this email changed that for me. So he was wanting to get forward. And then it was when Andrew shut down and the big church pastor came this way and then also wrote that last email, because you're going to see that kind of factors in. It just caused the judge to go, I waited 3 weeks, but I'm going to have to do this. This is very hard to write. And the very is all in capitals. And I have put this off as long as I can. I've tried to cool off as long as I can. This is speaking to you, big church pastor, as the leader, the guy that depended on God each step of the way because he didn't know what the heck he was doing without him. So the big church pastor had said that years ago to him.
Okay.
I hoped this was the guy. I never met him. I met a guy that seemed afraid of losing something, a guy that didn't say what he believed, a guy that has deep down resentment towards other believers. I have seen you shame myself and others, talk about your connections, your success, and all the while accuse others of pride. You have said that church has never been better, which really scares me. So basically, he's saying right from the start, like, I was looking for this guy that I had known in the past and I had these great interactions with. And now all of a sudden, all I got was a guy who wouldn't share what he believed. Like that was such an amazing paragraph that summarizes everything we've said in the past. Because we know that
Yeah.
the judge had met with the big church pastor several times. Now we just got a summary. You want to know what was said in all those meetings? Big church pastor never shared what he believed. He would shame other people, including the judge, and he
Yeah.
would accuse everybody else of pride, but never consider himself that he was in pride.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he goes, I want you to know I had a dark sense in our last meeting. So this is with everybody. The meeting was opened up with trashing John right away and accusing me of John putting my emails up on the blog. What a way to set the tone for the meeting right after prayer, of course. So that was the administrative thing, is the administrative aide had said, John put up the emails between all of you guys. And it's like the judge said, no, he didn't in that meeting. But they said, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And so that's why the big church pastor said, well, I looked at it myself, and I see that hadn't happened. But that had been the accusation in the meeting. So the
Yeah.
judge was kind of behind the eight ball from the beginning. The meeting wasn't spent talking about the Bible. The elders weren't defending the Bible. It was tradition or orthodoxy. So basically, this is the way we've always done it. We don't know why, or a lot of other people believe this.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
bright spot for my wife and I was talking with a young associate pastor on your staff. He asked a lot of questions. He seemed to understand John's book better than the other guys and made us feel loved. The rest of you had nothing, in my opinion. We see in a glass and God is too big to understand. Our answers, no believer or unbeliever should ever accept. You want to be against this, but still have no biblical reasons. I must have asked the question 5 times. What's your biblical
Yeah.
reason? Nothing.
Nothing.
I don't get what is he put so wrong that you can use the strong language of heresy and danger. I never got an answer. So he's saying right from the start, we pray and then instantly prayer's done and trash John, trash John, trash John. One person on their staff, a young guy, is asking questions. The rest of them are just piling on. And whenever the judge asks a question, it's, well, God's too big. God's this, God's that. No answers at all. And he's like, you guys are talking the level of heresy and danger, and you have no explanation and can't answer my questions. How can you be that way?
This is mobbing, right? These
Oh,
guys they've all been fueled. None of them have any support as to why they're so upset over what they've been fueled in. They don't know the origin of any of this, but getting them in a group together is just fueling it even more. They're all
right.
synced into each other's thought process, and it's just getting more and more, ramped up.
Right. And so the thing is the judge had called out the elders, like what they had done, you know, in the meeting to their face. Like,
Yeah,
you're doing
right.
this, you're doing that, you're doing this. So at this point, the judge actually calls out an elder who responded to that confrontation by apologizing. And the judge ends up affirming him at this section. I'm just kind of cutting it out. It was a longer section, but he kind of goes, this elder was the only one to write me and go, it was wrong how I behaved. So even in that room, it's funny. The charismatic pastor had one elder who went, we should handle it this way. And they kicked him off the board. The big church pastor had one elder who went, yikes, am I really like all of them? And had some time to think about it, and then wrote the judge privately. And now the judge is letting them all know, one of you guys, this
Yeah.
guy, actually wrote me in private and said he misbehaved himself,
Yeah.
meaning on
They all
all
did.
you misbehaved yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and so what happens with that guy?
Right. So he goes, my wife and I left more confused about you guys. She says she believes John's teaching more as a result. And I agree. So originally they kind of shamed her into having this meeting, family and everybody else, creating all this doubt about modeling God. And then she sits there, hears everything, and goes, there's no case. I actually believe what
Yeah.
John's saying now. I'm more likely to believe it.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the real proof.
Yeah.
Like, you made all these accusations, and obviously I'm going to hear the proof. And my husband asked you for the proof, and you had no proof. And this is why no one would meet with me, because there is no argument against it.
Right. Right.
And no one wants to answer my questions. They'll make a bunch of statements, and then when you ask a couple questions, that's it. And we've seen this with the charismatic pastor. I'm not reading the rest of the email.
Right.
That is how this whole thing operated. And if anybody thinks that these people tried to meet with me and I was the one that didn't meet, they clearly aren't hearing from God. They're clearly
Right.
deceived.
Right.
He goes, I took Chuck Colson's book. So this is 2009. I took Chuck Colson's book home and read the whole thing in a couple days. So they actually gave him this book. You know, you should read this. Again, that whole read this, read this.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
we don't have a position, but he has an answer.
Right.
It taught me a lot about how abstract orthodoxy, or the closed fist items, are handled. So there used to be, back in 2009, when it was talking about who do we have fellowship over? Well, there's some doctrine that we can be open with, and there's some doctrine that are closed fist. You believe this, or we don't have fellowship.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Colson had written about how you handle this. And now the judge is teaching it back to them from a book they handed him. He says, it's so abstract that it surely can't help us with the who are the false teachers question. He goes, the following is on page 64. So he quotes them a passage from Chuck Colson's book that they handed to him. Tolerance once meant listening respectfully to all points of view, freely discussed in our common search for the truth. But the creed for the new God of tolerance is that knowing truth is impossible. So everyone is free to think and act as he likes, with one exception: those who have the audacity to believe that they know the truth, particularly if they think God has revealed it to them, are not tolerated. It's an amazing quote from this book, because what he's saying is, and if you think about what's happened in the world since 2009, we're open to everybody except to people who say they know the truth, and then we're closed to them because they say they know the truth. So they're not really open to everybody. They're hypocrites for saying they're open to everybody. If they're truly open to everybody, they have to be true. They have to be open to people say, I know the truth. Because if they were truly secure in themselves, they go, you believe you know the truth. I don't agree, but that's okay. You believe you know it. But if somebody truly knows the truth and can state it, it's convicting, makes me feel bad. And so it's like, it's not that we're open to everybody. We're open to nobody causing me to, nobody stating something that's going to cause me to feel bad,
Right.
because I can see the contradiction in my own beliefs. I don't want to grow, and I want you to help me feel good not growing. So Chuck Colson wrote that, 18, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And the judge is quoting back to him, this is what you handed me, this book. And in this book, it lists what you're doing. And now we see what's happened in greater society. I feel like I was the first person in this relatively, new age, since the turn of the millennium, to go through this on a big scale. Like, I
Right.
have a non-contradicting model. It's not wrong. It's truth, because of all the principles, 4 principles being used with it, and they can't dispute it. So then they attack me for having the truth,
Yeah. Yep. Oh,
not for saying something wrong.
because you're right.
So the judge says, this reminded me of how John has been treated by you. I asked John to read the book, and he has. And I did. I read Colson's book. You accused him of unorthodoxy. You are calling unorthodoxy this book or the Nicene Creed. John believes the creed as well as I. I learned that you are upset because John believes the same what, but he has a different why, which is uncomfortable for you. So they're stating John's wrong because of this and because of that. No, John actually believes the same thing you do. It's the same what?
Yeah.
Jesus is the Son of God. Now,
Right.
why is Jesus the Son of God? And what are the implications of that? That's the issue. The
Right.
thing is you don't have a why that makes
Right.
sense, and neither does orthodoxy or tradition. But you call someone prideful because they have one. So the judge calls it out. John has a reason. That the thing is you can say I have the truth. If you say I have the truth and you state something that really isn't the truth, everybody's fine with you.
Oh,
But if
yeah.
you truly have the truth, which means you have a right how and a right why, and you state it, it makes everybody nervous because it makes you go, wait a minute, I don't have a why, or I have a wrong why. Wait a minute.
You're right.
And now I got to attack.
Yeah.
Most people would say they believe the Nicene Creed. Does that make you a believer now? Like that's all it is. State the Nicene Creed, and that's all, and we're all in.
If I say I believe the Nicene Creed, that's my ticket to heaven.
That's it. It's a bunch of whats.
Yeah.
I believe this is how Satan appears as an angel of light. He says the right what with the wrong why. Jesus showed us it is all about why we do things, not what. The Pharisees are worried about what. Traditionalists are worried about what. Big church pastors worried about the what.
Yeah.
And it is all appearance. This is why people are leaving church. This is why the church doesn't make sense. This is why people are hindered from growing. They don't know how to be real and intentional. The judge wrote this in 2009. Where's
Sounds like
church
what's
gone
going on
since
today.
2009? It's almost prophetic.
Yeah.
If you think about it, the judge basically goes, this is what you're doing, and this is what's going to lead to the decline of the church.
So you could change some of the tense of this message and just say, here's an article about the state of the church today in 2026. It's like it's spot on.
So now remember, all of this began because the big church pastor kicked out the youth minister who became the San Damiano pastor and put his son in that place.
Yep.
So the judge says, I listened to the pastor's son and the young associate pastor speak out about our generation. So the big church pastor's son was in that meeting as well. And so those were the two youngest guys in the meeting, and they were about the same age as the judge. So now the judge is saying, hey, everybody, this is what's wrong with you guys, you older guys.
Yeah.
And now I want to take it to what's going on with the young people. So now he's referencing the two young people on their staff. So I listened to them. This scared me because I heard the same speech from the San Damiano pastor countless times at San Damiano. And it was the beginning of the end for San Damiano. He kept pushing for the generations to work together. He told the older generation not to judge, not get political, get to know us younger guys, etc. And then your son talks about how we ask questions and want something real. You want to help people know what they believe and why. I don't know how your church can do that. The elders and you have handled Andrew and myself and my wife with a disaster.
Yeah.
I am hopeful that God will use the young associate in this role for your church. Based on our meeting, he seems to have a pure shepherd's heart right now and the willingness to understand us. How can God give us more if we can't handle the little things? Why would God bring my generation to your church if they aren't going to get help? So I want to stop here. There's a next section, but and like I said, I've cut out a bunch of stuff. This is a very long email, but and again, he had waited 3 weeks, but here he was saying this section was literally prophetic.
Yeah.
Why do
Oh,
you think you're going to help the next generation and grow this church when we and your own people say we want to understand why, and we want to grow, and none of you have a why. None of you can
right.
help us.
Right. And that's this, that generation they're talking about is asking those questions. And we even knew, like, back in that time, there was that stat. What was it? 89% of kids, when they turn 18, stop going to church. And what that really was once your parents stop making you don't go anymore. And what we're learning through all that is it's because those are the kids who went to church and weren't given any answers. It didn't make any sense.
Right.
So what, it's, you have this new generation coming up and saying, sure, I'll go to church. Explain to me why it's a benefit.
Right.
Like, what do I get out of it? And the answers they're given were just a bunch of what's, or a bunch of just because, or it's good for you. And
Tradition and orthodoxy. We've always gone to church, which is a what, and a bunch of people ad populum say it's good.
yeah, right.
So
And just doesn't, yeah.
the judge says, finally, I want to address this email from the big church pastor. So all of that was what he was feeling about the elders in a sense. He said, the first paragraph is just empty words in appearance. He goes, the second paragraph of the email, he goes, you go on to try and make John look bad. You don't address the fact that you were wrong about my emails being on the blog, or that the administrative aide once again had her story wrong. You say you don't understand how John can justify himself here. John has told his story to his blog readers and said he is looking into legal action. How is he threatening the churches? Can you consider that once again, you're using scripture out of context? This has been the biggest frustration of mine this whole process. It's been in your emails and some sermons. To me, this is using God's word in vain, and it is spiritual abuse. Do you really understand Paul's teaching? Big church pastor. So remember, he quoted that 1 Corinthians 6. He goes,
Yeah.
and do you now consider John a brother all of a sudden? Would it be abusive of me to get out all the verses of how you were supposed to treat a fellow believer? You've been using the Bible to justify yourself with me, and I'm sick of it. And then he goes to the 1 Corinthians 6:5 and has a whole commentary. Like, look, they go, John can't sue us. The passage says a brother can't sue a brother. Are you saying John's a brother?
Yeah.
If you're saying John's a brother believer, then you can't say he's a heretic, misleading people, a wolf, and not a believer. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Either
Right.
John's not a believer and he can sue you, and you got to just take it, and you can't say anything about him sharing all your emails with everybody, or
Right.
he is a believer and you're all wrong. Now, which one is it?
Crickets.
I say this to your shame. This is 1 Corinthians 6:5. Is it so that there is not among you a wise man who will be able to decide between brethren? So he's saying, he goes, who else can handle the slander about John that has gone on? The churches won't talk with him. Nobody will sit and understand him. You and your staff have slandered him and his beliefs without a why. They have done this to me, my wife, and our parents. It is to your shame that none of you can handle this. Does God want you to continue slandering him without a why? I believe this situation has eternal consequences for some. This isn't a simple gossip issue anymore. You can't get away with this in the world, but in church, it's okay. You say, and that was always an issue we had, like in the world, you get sued for this, but it's okay to do it in the church. You can say, bottom line, this has been a feeling based on your prophetic gift. If modeling God is right, you have falsely prophesied. I feel strongly that how you have handled this will affect your ministry. If you have prophesied right, I believe God will bless the big church with more. If wrong, things will get harder. This has all been very draining for me. I have never felt hurt by the church before this ordeal. You claim we were the ones that started this, but that is not the truth. You were the ones calling John a heretic and dangerous first to my family and to me. So that's another point. I didn't start any of this. And in Colson's book, he said it's the Christian is the one who gets attacked. It's the non-Christian who initiates the attack. We
Right.
asked you for an explanation. Andrew and I are separate issues. So even the judge recognizes Andrew and I were two different issues. I am saddened more for him because I know how much he looked up to you. You were his mentor. He has shared your interaction as of late, and it makes me literally sick to my stomach. How does a mentor not know the guy he's mentoring and meet just 3 times in a year? This seems like it is all about you, big church pastor. I believe you cannot repair anything until you actually take an emotional risk. I encourage you to be specific with your apologies with everybody. So the judge is actually encouraging him on how to confess and repent.
Yeah.
How can someone forgive if they don't know what they are being forgiven for? So it's like, how do I forgive you if you don't say what you've done that I should
Right.
forgive? Because remember that email to Andrew was all if and maybe and that one.
Yep.
This has been extremely difficult to write. My goal wasn't to shame anybody or be disrespectful. I couldn't hold it in any longer. And if I'm wrong, I trust God will show me. I believe we are finally to the end with this chapter. Confession and repentance are the only next steps, big church pastor. He called it out. A lot of people have been affected by your statements. I cannot look up to you as a good guy until that happens. Confession and repentance. I trust God will tell you your next step. And then he signed off.
Man, that's epic. So this is to the big church pastor
And all the elders.
and all the others. So did they respond?
No response. And again, all of this, everything in the previous episode and this episode is why no one will ever sit down face to face and be interviewed about it or talk about it. Because everything that you and Lord did with the charismatic pastor and his entire church, everything that Andrew and the judge did in this email would demonstrate that these leaders and these churches were not Christian. They are not Christian organizations. And what's funny is they're both cult organizations. And if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to sue me for that, I would sit down and go through everything and show all of this and ask them to answer to this. And the funny thing is people know our organization today is not a cult. And it's amazing how people will want me to treat it as a cult. Like somebody will come to me in our community and go, John, why don't you make these people do this?
I don't make anybody do anything.
I literally don't make anybody do anything, but isn't it interesting? Like we all naturally see organizations as a cult and then that's all they do online is when someone said your organization is a cult. I'm like, well, what's your definition of cult? Because according to their definition, we could be a cult. What's your definition? Half the time I never get a response. The other, 49%, I get a definition that's wrong.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, if that's it, and then I'll share my definition is this, and we don't do this, we do that. But the thing is like, what's your definition of a cult? But it's funny how be honest, there are people in our fellowship who say they don't want to be in a cult, but if it was to their advantage, they'd want it to be a cult. And it's not, and they get frustrated and they don't even realize why they're frustrated is because they're like, basically, you'd be happy if I acted like a cult leader and made people in this organization do stuff for your benefit. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I think some people prefer to not think for themselves because thinking for yourself is uncomfortable and it takes owning responsibility over your life. And there is comfort in being in an organization where you're just told what to do and you just do it and you follow orders. You just become a drone. And that has been the antithesis of what our community has been from the start. It's always been, we go back to modeling God. It's followed what has actually been taught in modeling God, where it starts the preface with thinking intentionally and finding out how you're unique. And those, and ultimately hearing from God more and taking more direction from him and answering only to him. But that's what I think it is. I think people, when they're insecure and when they don't really want to grow and pursue truth, there is comfort in just being told what to do.
Right.
Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it's just like, I don't have to make any decisions. And then and you want to know really why? It's because if shit goes wrong, it's not my fault.
Right. And
Yeah.
then and even if the cult leader in these organizations can prove to somebody they're wrong, then they lash out and they take off and go find a different cult leader that'll help them. So I
Yeah.
want to kind of wrap this up by saying that it was around this time that Laura and I started dating. And so the thing is that I had a list of 10 things I was looking for in a wife before I got married the first time. And my wife matched all 10 of those things. I had a strategy for marriage and
Yeah.
I did my strategy perfectly
You made it
and
happen.
made
Yeah.
it happen. And it did not last
Yeah.
longer than 15 years.
Right.
So at this point, I was not looking to ever get married again because I had no strategy. And the thing is that my kids had gone through all this trauma. Her kids had gone through this trauma, and our kids had known each other the whole life. So we were kind of like keeping the kids interacting with each other to kind of help these times. And what happened was I started growing an attraction to Laura, who looks nothing like all of the women I was attracted to before her.
Yeah. Right.
And it was interesting because two kind of things happened here. One is that I realized God made our brain like malleable, like it can change. And the thing is attraction, the reason why people fall in love at first sight, or the reason why they're attracted, is because at a young age, it's what they're around or what they tell themselves. They see a character and they go, I like that character. 11-year-old girl goes, I like that male character. Now he's a bad guy, but he's cute and dashing and everything else. And then their unconscious looks for that guy and juices them and gives them energy towards that guy. And then they are attracted to abusive guys because your unconscious says you like everything about that guy, including how he's breaking the law and how he's being mean to people. But then she takes on this, I can change him mentality
Yeah.
to cope. But the thing is when people date and they go on a first date and they go, no, all they're doing is responding to what they have told their unconscious they're attracted to.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong. It
And they're
could be
just
good for them.
reinforcing that belief even more too, aren't they?
Yeah. The thing is one of the things I've told people is get to know somebody and be friends with them and help them, their unconscious change towards you. Don't be in a rush to date them. And again, it goes back to the no touching thing.
Yeah.
Don't be in a rush. Let their brain change and grow an attraction. Through this whole process, here's Laura defending me to the Charismatic Compassionate Church in an amazing way. She was at the center of this with Andrew. Now Andrew's gone. We're spending a lot more time. And all of a sudden, I'm finding that I'm not attracted to women that look like the women I'm attracted to. I'm sitting, at the downtown Starbucks in Appleton and watching some woman walk across the street that I should be attracted to. And I'm like, well, she doesn't look like Laura. And then I'm going, what's happening to me?
Like your standard has been changing.
Yeah. And so the thing is I essentially told God, look, if there's a different way that marriage is supposed to happen, because I did my plan, it doesn't work. I'm open to your plan. But the thing is that I'll take direction from you. And the problem is that I don't want to date Laura and then have it fall apart. And then we never talk or it goes bad. And then the kids never talk and the kids kind of need each other. So Laura and I were like, let's date. Let's not tell anybody. And let's try to wreck this thing.
Yeah.
Let's what made me successful in business was fail fast. And I felt like God was showing me this, you know what you did over here? Kind of, you let me show you how to do this over here. You should be doing this in dating. Like the goal isn't to be touching and doing all this stuff. The goal is to be sharing up front and being more yourself
Yeah.
and not trying to hide who you are. So they like somebody who's not you. And then they find it later, like just be you and have her be completely her. And let's just in private
Yeah.
try to
Break
wreck
it.
it. And you know what? I think we're both mature enough that if we find out we're not right for each other, we can encourage each other to be right. Because we had both encouraged each other to the nth degree with our previous spouses.
Right.
We had done that.
Yeah.
So we know it's like, great. You know that I care for you and I want you to be happy. And if I'm not the person for you, let's figure this out, wipe it out, and let's just push each other to other people. So we kind of kept that. Well, we kept that a secret because we were going to try to wreck it, have it be, we know for a fact why we're not good for each other. And then we could encourage each other towards other people or just not get married. Like the thing is I did not want to go through what I went through. And I knew it was my plan, and I was not cocky enough to go, well, it was her fault. It's like, no, that was your plan,
Yeah.
John, and it was wrong.
Yeah.
Like it'd be prideful to think, no, I could do the plan better. I did the plan. It didn't work.
Yeah. And also, it's every marriage, like when you account for a divorce, what I like to help you, it's not always an easy pill to swallow, is you need to account for not just why the marriage ended, but why you were together in the first place.
Right.
So that's really, you can't just start with when things started getting bad. It's like, wait a minute, why were you together in the first place? So what I love is not only are you and Laura trying to break it and doing it in a way where it's like, we want to make sure the kids aren't hurt through this, so that if it doesn't work,
and the rest of the group, no one has to know. It's not like we go,
we can
hey,
still be
we're
friends.
dating, and make some dramatic thing.
We're mature enough, right? Is we know, because of the history we've had already, we're going to be able to be friends and support each other in life and in ministry and all that stuff. But on the other side of this too is, if it does work, you'll know for sure by time you tell everybody else.
Right. And we both said, you know what? Let's follow what God's telling us to do, and let's learn about this so we could use it to help other people. Like if we follow what God's doing and this doesn't work, that's something we could teach other people. But we were clearly doing something that was the opposite of what everybody else was doing.
Right.
And what we had both done in our first marriages. And so we were just blatantly just ready to do that. So now here's my cliffhanger.
All right.
So you remember on May 21st, the charismatic pastor had said, I have not read this email except for the first couple of paragraphs. I have no desire to read further, nor do I wish further interaction with you unless you have a desire to repent from what is written in Modeling God. I appreciate you not contacting me further. Then we had completely proven the charismatic church pastor, the big church wrong. They both were afraid they were going to get sued. They both were afraid that we were going to expose emails. And less than 20 days later, the charismatic pastor wrote on June 9th, I and another pastor would like to stop by in person and share with you a letter that has been drafted by the Fox Valley Evangelical Ministers Fellowship. We would also like to open up the possibility of further dialogue after this. Let me know what time might work for you. We can either meet halfway or we can come up to where you are. Remember, because I was living up in Green Bay, and these people are down in Appleton. Thanks, John. I'll look forward to hearing from you related to this. And now the drama everybody knows about begins.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Quite the cliffhanger. Thank you, John. Thanks for leading us into this so well. What a great episode. Awesome to hear some of the backstory again of Andrew and of the judge and of you and Laura. I mean, those are all, we could do a whole series on those relationships in and of themselves, but can't wait for Mobbed Part 10. But thank you for being here with me on Mob 9. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
All right. Thanks to John once again. And yeah, let's dive into some of the doctrine behind this story. I love interacting with John because I feel like so much doctrine comes out already just through him and I interacting with one another. We're both big doctrine guys, but of course I always have more that I want to dive into in each episode. So one of the things we talked about was being a leader versus a boss, right? It was, at least it was implied. And one of the things we saw from Andrew was his calling out or appealing to the excellence of the big church pastor as a leader, and that leaders are meant to be more excellent, not less. We see this throughout the Bible. And one of the ways we see it is in that God treated leaders as more excellent. And that really comes to show you that comes forth when you see that God was a lot more direct and confrontational and sometimes even harsh towards the leaders because they had a greater responsibility and they had a bigger influence over the people. So we see this with Moses, right? Moses clearly had a greater responsibility, and God treated him as if he was more excellent, which really means he held them or held Moses to a higher standard than he did the usual Israelite. Peter in the New Testament's a great example of this, and we constantly see Jesus treating him to a higher standard than he did the other disciples. Maybe no better shown than when he, allowed Satan to sift him as wheat and said, I'll pray for you. And, you know, let it happen, didn't get in the way of it happening. And how about when he said, get behind me, Satan? Like these are Jesus treating Peter at a level that he's not treating anyone else. And you can look at it like Jesus is just being mean, but there's something else going on here. Is Jesus knows Peter can handle it. Peter, and he knows Peter needs to be treated this way in certain contexts. And it's actually for the benefit of everybody else around that Jesus is holding Peter to a higher standard. So why do leaders that we see today, even in the church, want special treatment? Why do we so often see leaders in the church focusing on the perks of leadership? The reality is there aren't perks of leadership. Leadership's a responsibility. People who are pursuing the perks, really, those are bosses. One of the things that I experienced for myself with the big church pastor, I went through a discipleship program that his church put on for years and was honored to be part of a small group that he was one of the leaders on. And I remember very early on in that small group, we had all been given opportunities to share certain parts of our story and certain beliefs that we had based on some key doctrine. I shared about my belief over God's nature and over the non-contradictory definition of grace. So I taught about God being right and just. I taught about grace being the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life, and was very excited to have an opportunity to teach a lot of this stuff in an appropriate setting in this small group in which I was encouraged to do so. His response was to tell me this is not a theology course, which essentially implied chill out on the teaching. And he also gave me a warning to not let my understanding too far exceed my experience, which I felt was just a stab right in the heart, a stab in who God created me to be. And I felt like it was the opposite of the journey we were all on in that small group in the first place. We're there to learn. Yeah, so we can have great and better and more effective experiences with God working through us towards other people. But we have to learn this stuff. And it reminded me of something Jesus said. Jesus taught the opposite, frankly. When Jesus had this interaction with Thomas, who is commonly referred to as doubting Thomas, what we see is after the resurrection, Thomas said that he wouldn't believe unless he sees and touches Jesus. He needed to see the wounds, he needed to touch them. A week later, Jesus appears, invites Thomas to touch his scars. And when Thomas finally believes, you can look at John chapter 20, verses 24 through 29 for this. Jesus responds by saying, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Essentially saying, blessed are those who believe based on understanding and don't have to experience it as well, or don't have to only experience it, or experience isn't the cause. So we need understanding and experience. And it was just a shot right in the heart to have this big church pastor tell me essentially to slow down in my understanding. Now, one of the other things that was a key theme throughout this episode was these leaders being offended or wounded or hurt. Now, the Bible addresses this. Psalm 119, 165 says, "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." Ultimately, those who live according to the law don't have anything to be afraid of, right? We fear God, we show him reverence, but if I'm following the law, I'm living in a way where if something, like if I do something wrong, great, I confess and repent. If not, I keep walking the path God has before me. If other people come against me, I should know the right way to handle that. If other people say things poorly about me, and I know if I am offended, if I follow the law, if I love the law or God's word, I would know to forgive if it's an unbeliever or to confront if it's a believer. So even if I am offended, there's a right way to handle it, which we saw the way Andrew handled his offense was the right way. And the way the elders of the big church handled it was not. They used being offended as a rationalization to duck dealing with the issue. And this kind of comes to this point of that John made as well about how Christians don't attack. This is one of the ways that we can tell somebody's not a Christian is if they initiate an attack. Christians do not initiate attacks on other people. Christians love. That is the way they'll know us, is by our love for one another. And the last thing I want to talk about is what it means to be broken. So we talk about the sanctification process, right? And what ultimately the breaking process. What the breaking process is the plan I have for my life, the plan I have for my own happiness and joy and success. My plan gets in the way of God's plan for my life because my plan is not God's plan for my life. Not originally, anyways. We all have ideas for what we think our life should be and where we should go in life. And if our original plan for the way we lived our life was the same as God's, then we wouldn't need God. So there's clearly we have a flesh. There are these plans we have for what we think will make us happy. The breaking process is when my plan has died. My plan has gone. My plan has been cast into the darkness. Usually that happens because I realize at some point through either understanding or more likely for people through experience that it doesn't work, that my plan has led to the opposite of what I thought it was going to. Which I love. John talked about this in his first marriage, but this applies to life in general. John said, I had no strategy. Because he had lived, he talked about, like, I don't want to get married anymore. I had no strategy to get married. And it's because that part of his life, that plan for John's life was broken. That plan for John's life had been dead. It died. And what's interesting is once that plan for John's life had died and John had no strategy in that area anymore, is also the state of mind John needed to be in order for God to bring him his helpmeet, for God to bring him the woman that John could marry and it be epic because it would be according to God's plan. John didn't have a plan anymore. So what's your plan? Not just for marriage, but for life. Has your plan for happiness died? Or are you still feeding it? That's it for today on Unlocked. I'm Dr. Joel Swakowski. You can find John again on X and on Instagram at the handle @modelinggod. You can go to modelinggod.com to see the books that he's authored and to also find the podcasts that we've worked on. Go to flowcess.com if you'd like to hear more and learn more about the model for the mind and the brain. So yeah, go check out those resources. Keep learning from John's journey. Thank you for listening. Keep seeking truth. Keep living it out. See you next time.